Well, hello again, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. I am Marty Bird with JMT Consulting. So happy to have you here for this very popular webinar on Sage Intacct's Release 1. What's new in Sage Intacct Release 1? We have a lot of great content to get to today, but first on the next slide, let's take a look at some housekeeping. So first of all, when you have a question, you're probably all used to this format in Zoom. Please use the Q&A button at the bottom, and we'll be happy to get to those questions towards the end of the webinar. We also will provide you this complete deck and the recording after the webinar, so you'll have that for your reference. A lot of you are here for CPE credits, and that's wonderful. There are some requirements to receive that one CPE credit. You do need to respond to the polling questions. You know how that works. They'll pop up and you'll answer. And that's a lot of fun. We get to interact with you that way. And you'll also earn your CPE credit that way, as well as completing the survey, and you have to stay for most of the duration of the webinar. We want you to be here for the full hour and enjoy our time together. If you have some technical issues or questions, you can certainly email Kristen Fredericks. That's her email address right there. She helps us with the CPE credits, so she's very well versed at getting back with you about the CPE credits. As the form of introductions, let me be sure that you know Dougie Stanton is with us today, Mike Primiani is with us today, and so is Jessica Rogers, all from JMT Consulting. They'll be conducting this webinar after I do these brief housekeeping notes. Most of you know JMT Consulting. A quick reminder, we do operate all over North America. We have an office in Mount Juliet, Tennessee, which is right outside of Nashville, Tennessee. And you're going to hear a lot more about Nashville from Dougie here in a minute because we have a big conference coming up just in a couple of months. Some of the services that we offer, we are a professional services consulting firm. We offer our services to nonprofits only. That's what sets us apart in the community. We offer our services again to nonprofits only. So we've developed that expertise over the 30 plus years we've been in business. We implement and support cloud-based ERP solutions. Today we're going to be talking about Sage Intacct, but we also support MIP. You can see the rest of the services and some of the partners that we are happy to have on our side and happy to recommend to you. But like I said, we've been in business for over 30 years and we have a great set of clients. Happy to continue serving this community. Dougie, take it from here.
All right, so here's our first polling question. I haven't seen it pop up yet. There it goes. If you would be so kind and just answer that, we want to just get a feel for if you've registered for Innovate yet. 25, just answer that, and then we're gonna go ahead and move on. Jessica, if you'll go ahead and move on to the next. Okay, Innovate 2025. Innovate 2025, if you've never been, you've missed out. Here's your chance to join us this May 5th, 6th, and 7th. It's a Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. May 5th. It's this year. It'll be held in Nashville, smack dab in the middle of downtown Nashville. Here's a picture of the skyline. The 5th is our pre-conference sessions, and the 6th and the 7th is the regular conference. It's a good chance for you to network with other clients that are clients of ours and to partners, and you'll have representatives there from some of our partners as well. The added benefit is we get to meet you in person and vice versa. And it's a great chance for learning how a deeper dive in a lot of areas and in some areas that you may not be aware of. So I'm going to go ahead and cool. Okay, I just saw the answer pop in. Sorry. The keynote speakers this year are Camille Wilson and George Miller. And we're going to have these breakout sessions on Sage Intacct, the leadership, software innovations, and MIP. Here's what, for those of you that have never been, you don't have to commit to a breakout session. You can attend whatever session you wish, but if you want to follow a session all the way through, you have that ability as well. You also are going to have a chance to take advantage of our learning labs. A lot of us, we have added a lot of staff, so that frees, like for example, I'm able to be freed up and spend a lot of time in the learning lab. It gives you a chance to do some one-on-one time with various staff members and to ask for some, like if you have some specialized questions or whatever. It's all part of the conference, so there's no extra charge for that. So Jessica, if you'll go to the next one. The pre-con workshops I'm really excited about. This year, the Monday before the conference starts, before everybody comes in for the Monday evening registration, here are the 4 main topics for the pre-con conference. We're going to have the Sage Intacct one, core features and troubleshooting tips, which is especially helpful if you're a newer user to Intacct. Um, Myself and Taylor will be hosting the Mastering Sage Intacct reporting and dashboards. It's an all-day session where we show you basically a dashboard and then show you how we built it all the way through. The budgeting brilliance, that's the Sage Intacct Planning Unleashed one. That's a half-day one, and then we also have a half-day one for hands-on MIP core modules training. So if you'd like to come to the pre-conference, it's a deeper dive in a lot of these areas. Just be sure to register for that separately than the regular Innovate conference. Okay, Jessica, next one. And then here are our upcoming webinars in March. If you are not sure how to register, just go to our jmt.consulting site, select events, and you'll see these webinars listed here. And here are the 3 topics that we'll be covering in March, coming up in March, which is next week, y'all. It's coming about fast. So one of them is the fostering a culture of continuous planning. And then the next one is how a PO benefits nonprofits. And then the last one is the timely and impactful budget reporting in Intacct. And that is more like an Intacct kind of training session. And that's coming up in March. All right. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jessica.
I'm actually gonna take this slide, Dougie.
Oh,
Thank
sorry,
you.
sorry.
And good afternoon to everyone, and thanks for joining. So today's webinar, the agendas are we'll have learning objectives, we'll identify core new features in Sage Intacct, we'll demonstrate some of those features, and we'll review the benefits of the new functionality. You see the agenda of the different modules that we'll cover. I won't read through all of them, but you can see we have an extensive list for today. So if you want to go, yep. All right, so if you joined the Release 4 webinar in November, I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but the first thing we want to touch on and remind you of today is to authenticate and validate your custom domain by May 2025. If you don't do this, your emails from Sage will not work with the enhanced email delivery service. Authenticating your domain helps ensure your email communications are secure and reliable. It will improve email deliverability, reducing the chance of your messages being marked as spam, and it protects your domain from being used in phishing attacks. You can find more information on this topic on the help community and reach out to our support if needed. I recommend getting this done way before May. There's no exact date, so we'll just call it April 30th. And with that, I'll throw it to Jessica to take on a few topics.
Perfect. Thank you. Um, so another kind of general item that we wanted to talk about today is in the company and administration module. So anything we talk about today, if it's permission based, you're not necessarily automatically going to have that permission granted. That's kind of a common misconception because we do create a, full user or full admin user. And so if you are that full admin user, you still have to go in and give yourself access to any of these permissions in that role. And if you're not the administrative user that does have that full admin role, if you see anything today that you're interested in, you'll need to reach out to your administrator to see if they can grant you that access. So anything that's new in Sage Intacct, you will need to give yourself access to that. And that goes for any new release or any new feature that comes out in Intacct. So definitely something to keep in mind. Anything we covered today, if you go back and you're like, wait a minute, I saw that on the webinar and I really want that access, you'll have to grant it. With that, we're going to launch our next polling question. And so, is it possible to transfer assets between dimensions in Sage Fixed Assets? And we'll give you a few minutes or a few seconds to answer that.
I did see a question come up on where you can authenticate your domain. So for that, you will have the administrator do it, and they will go into the company setup, and they will look on the security tab, and you should see that feature over there.
And as Mike mentioned before, if you have questions about it, not quite sure how to do it, just contact support at jmtconsulting.com and we'll be happy to help you out. All right.
Yeah, so we have the results in. So about half of you guys said yes, you can. 11% said no, and then a portion are still tracking fixed assets in Excel. So we definitely want to take a deeper dive into the fixed assets in Sage Intacct. We're going to move all of that into Intacct, right? Okay, so those of you that said no, this is a new feature. So you're partially right. You couldn't do that prior to the release, but now you are able to transfer fixed assets. You can transfer them between dimensions such as the department, project, class, any dimension that's not the entity and location. So if you have an asset that you need to maybe move from a program department into the HR department, anything of that nature, you are able to do it. And it will create the journal entry to move the cost of the asset as well. And so this screenshot here just shows you where you'll enter the changes for a fixed asset. And we're actually going to move into a demo environment and take a look at this so we can see it in action. Okay, so one thing to call out is that this feature is in the Sage Fixed Assets Management module. And that's a really important thing to think about because the Fixed Assets Management module just became available in the second release of 2024. So it's only been around for about 9 months or so. So if you've had fixed assets in Intacct since before then, you likely have either Asset Edge or the SIG Fixed Assets module. And if that's the case, this won't apply. But if you're interested in learning more about Sage Fixed Assets, again, definitely reach out and that could be a potential upgrade option for you. So in your application dropdown and then under the Fixed Assets Management is what you'll be looking for. So if you have Fixed Assets Management, you'll go into the asset list. And in the asset list, if we pick out, so we have a Lenovo asset here, and this is actually a bad example because it's in ready for review. So if it's in ready for review, we won't be able to transfer it. So I'm actually going to pick an in-service asset. Okay, so we have a Lenovo ThinkPad. I'm going to go into this asset. It is in service. And once I'm in the asset, I'm going to go in the top right and click transfer. And I can choose the transfer date. So if this asset was transferred at the beginning of the month and it's currently in the financial department, so I'm going to go in and I'm moving this, say, from the financial department into the HR department. Someone in HR has taken this laptop. And maybe we need to update the employee now. So Heidi Klum now has this asset. So now I'm comfortable. These are all of the proper dimensions for this asset. And I'm going to click transfer. Oh. Okay, so we don't have depreciation posted for this asset. Let's take a look at the one that I had transferred previously. Get back to our asset list. Okay. Let's see. I apologize. We find an asset. We'll try to transfer one. Another one. Isn't the one I had done earlier. Okay. We move it to HR. Heidi again. Hopefully we don't get the error message. Okay, so we'll transfer this before November 30th. Heidi took ownership of this asset on November 26th. I think that was Thanksgiving last year. Okay, so Heidi now has this asset. It's listed under Heidi as the employee in Intacct, and the transfer date was November 26th. So this is the general asset information. And so we have that updated, and if we ever needed to see when it was transferred, on the transfer history tab here, we're able to see that the transfer date was November 26th. And this is that journal entry that I mentioned. So this journal entry is showing it's all within the same account. We're still in the computer equipment account, which makes sense because it's a laptop. But the cost was credited to the old department and debited into the HR department that we had transferred to. And if we do the drop down for additional information, we can see that it's now coded to Heidi Klum as the employee. All right, let's move back into our presentation now, and I'll take it back to Mike for accounts payable.
All right. In accounts payable, we now have vendor-based AP bill approvals. A bunch of our clients have asked about this, so we are definitely happy to see it released. So instead of using value-based approval or user-based approvals, you can now do vendor-based approvals. So this is where you will select on the vendor record which user is the designated approver of bills for that specific vendor, as opposed to user-based, where all bills are directed to one user, or value-based, where it's directed to a particular user based on the amount of the bill. So any unrestricted business or employee user with the approved bill's permission can be added as the approver on the vendor record. You can also assign a user group as the bill approver, where you're not limited to just one approver per vendor. But everybody in that user group needs to have the appropriate permissions for it to work. All you need is one user within that group to approve, not everybody. I will talk a little bit more about user groups in the next topic as well, so I'll remind you or show you how to set up those groups at that time. So to get this set up, we're going to go into our accounts payable configuration, and we're going to scroll down to the bill approval settings, which you see on the screenshot on the left. we're going to enable the bill approval, and then we will select Manage, where it will bring up a pop-up that you see in the screenshot that says Accounts Payable Bill Approval Policy. And under Rule Type, you are going to select Vendor-Based Approval. So once you select this and you save it, once you would then navigate to the vendor record, and on the Additional Information tab, you will now see under the Billing Details section a field to select the bill approver. And that's where you'll select either an individual user or the user group that you set up. So that's how you can update the bill approver or the on the vendor record manually. On the next slide, I will talk about mass updating vendor records. You can do this with, you guessed it, a CSV import file. Once the configuration we just discussed is set up, you will download a fresh template, and you will now see a column labeled Bill Approve ID all the way at the end of the template, all the way on the right. And then this column is where you'll enter the user ID or the user group ID that you want to populate on the vendor record. Now, it is very important to note that when you update vendor records with an import file, any column in the template that is ultimately uploaded will update that field on the vendor record. So what does that mean? It means if you import the address column and leave it blank, the address on the vendor record will become blank. So for purposes of updating the bill approver, we want to delete all columns besides vendor ID, which will identify which vendor, and the bill approve ID. So in the screenshot you're seeing on the right, you see it is in column C as opposed to the last column of the downloaded template. I would recommend trying this out with 1 or 2 vendors before doing a mass import. Next slide, Jessica. All right, next in purchasing, we now have some new flexibility to delegate approvals when someone is out of office or on vacation. You can assign a full user group instead of an individual user. So right away, we see more new functionality for user groups. Before this release, we couldn't delegate approvals to users who were restricted to specific departments and/or locations, and we were only able to delegate individual users. Similar to the vendor-based approval we just discussed, we only need 1 delegate to approve the transaction in order for it to flow through, the approval process, not the full user group. So to set this up, we will go into our purchasing configuration. We will enable purchasing approval under the approval section, and then we will enable delegation a little bit below that. And again, we'll see manage pop up, and when we click that, a new pop-up will appear. The default delegate type will be user group. We'll assign a default delegate that you can ultimately override. So you see on the right where you say user or user group, and it all says delegate approvers. You can override that. So one user group is assigned to one particular approver and another user group to a different approver. And once we save that, we can go to the next slide. You can go into your individual preferences and you can set up your out of office period with a start and end date. This will trigger routing your approvals to the delegates during that time frame. And also, admin users have the ability to set up preferences for individual users as a backup. So if they go into the company admin users tab, you'll see in the bottom screenshot the list of users, and to the right, the preferences that they could click into to set up those preferences for the specific user. Next slide. So how do we set up user groups? We'll stay in the admin tab in the company module. We'll select groups. We'll add a new one, give it a name and description. And then once we save, we can add the individual members for that group. And then that group becomes available for you to use in the two functionalities that we just discussed and throughout the system, such as setting role-based permissions for a group or assigning financial reports to a specific user group. So now I'm going to ask Jessica to go back into the demo environment, and we'll just walk you through setting up that group and then turning on the configurations for the two functionalities we just discussed. So you'll go into Company, and we're on the Admin tab already, so we'll go into Groups. And you can see I already have one entered for delegate approvers and for vendor approvals, but we'll just create a new one here. And we could just give it whatever name, maybe just delegate 2, for example. And then once we save that, it will ask you to enter your first member. So let's just pick K Grace. Yep. It should save. Oh, well, now you got to cancel. So then we see the delegate approvers 2, and all the way on the right, we see members. If we click that, we'll be able to add additional members, excuse me. And then you'll just kind of do it manually here, add. And let's add Penny Smith. And then we'll add one more. And let's do T Hayes. All right, so that's setting up a user group. And now let's go into our AP configuration. And we'll show you that configuration to set up the vendor-based approver. So you'll scroll down till we see approvals. So here we already have enable bill approval set up. So if we select manage, we'll see what the system already has set up. And you can see under rule type, it just has Carler Grace. So Carler would be the approver for everyone. But if we select that drop down, we'll change it to vendor-based approval. And we'll hit save. So now let's go to a vendor record. We could just pick anyone, for example, or we could act as if we're adding a new one. And we'll go to the additional information tab. And I wish I would have showed you this before we added the functionality, because you see that bill approver there towards the middle of the screen. Right there, that wouldn't have been there before we just selected the vendor-based approval. But now that we did, it's popped up. So here you could select an individual user if you want, or if you go back down and scroll down to the bottom, you should see the vendor approval group that you had seen set up in the user groups. So you could do that as well. And then if you wanted to do the mass update with the invoice with the import template, we'll show you where to get that template. So if you go into the company tab, and I believe it's under setup and import data. So as a reminder, as she scrolls down to the AP section, anything with the asterisks next to it, so you see that next to vendors, the asterisks, that tells you that you can update that record with a template. Otherwise, it's just adding new ones. So vendors were allowed to update the vendor record. And we should see all the way on the right that bill approve ID. Oh, it's not all the way to the right. Excuse me. It's right there, column DF. Cool. Now we'll go to set up the delegate approvers for when you're out of office or, on vacation or, call out sick for a day. So we'll go into our purchasing configuration. And we'll scroll down to approvals again. Okay, so right here, they already have enable purchasing approval. And then a little further down, we'll see enable delegation. Nope, scroll back up, right above where it says Carla's name. Yep. And that should pop up a manage button. We'll select that. Another window will pop up. And so right now it's set to default user. So we'll default that to user group. We'll select our default. So we could just do delegate, whichever one. And then we can change it from there. So the reason why I didn't change for Carla is because Carla's in that group. So we need someone else. So, but I think you can change it. If you click the drop down there, scroll down. Oh, because the delegate type is set to user. I'm sorry. You see next on the left? Yeah. So now, like, for example, let's pick delegate approvers, not two. Right. So we can set up the different user groups for different approvers. And then we'll save this. And we can't really at this point demonstrate the actual approval process because we're, in our demo environment using, fake users. But if we go into the admin tab or the users, excuse me, company, admin users. And for example, let's go to Penny Smith. All the way on the right, we see the preferences. And if you scroll down, you should see a section for delegating. Right there, approve delegation. And we will checkbox it to turn it on. And then we'll select the start date and end date. And then throughout that time period, oh, it's a long vacation. Throughout that time period, those delegates will be triggered to approve anything set up for Penny. So we'll save this. And now you have both those functionalities configured. So we can go back to our slideshow and we'll talk about the next topic.
If I could interrupt for just a second.
Of course.
There was a question here that applies to this topic, and I think everybody would be interested in it. The question is, can vendor approval be used in purchasing or only in the AP bill entries? It's a valid question because vendors are used in purchasing, right? But vendor approval is only used for those bills that are entered in accounts payable. So even though you may have bills coming over from purchasing, when a transaction gets converted to AP bills, you won't, that's already posted. So it's not going to go through the approval system again in AP. So I just wanted to make that point. Thanks.
Thank you, Dougie. Thank you for keeping an eye on the Q&A. Okay, so with this release, AP automation has found its way into the purchasing module. This has general availability to all customers who have AP automation enabled. If you don't have it enabled and you are interested in it, you could send an email to our support team or your account manager, and we can assist you with that. What AP automation with purchasing does is allows you to upload or email an invoice that you receive from your vendor, and then AI will automatically match it against the purchase order. Once it is matched, which should happen rather quickly, a draft invoice is automatically created with the original documentation attached to that transaction. And then you have the ability to review, edit if needed, and validate the invoice and then post it. Any corrections that you make to the draft will be fed back to the AI engine where it will update the machine learning module. So you shouldn't have those errors going forward once you fix it the first time. So you see the little graphic at the bottom of this slide that shows the workflow of the automation. In the middle, we see the matching of the vendor, GL codes, another dimension, matching with the PO, as well as identifying duplicates. So on the next slide, we'll see setting up the configuration. It's a one-time configuration under the purchasing module. You'll scroll to the automation settings and you will select the checkbox for automate purchasing transactions and document matching. And then a chart will appear where you can select the entity name. So if you want to set it at the top level, it applies to all entities, or you can select a specific entity. You will select the target transaction, which is what transaction you want the system to ultimately create. So in this case, a vendor invoice. And then the source transaction, which is what transaction you want to match the target to. So in this case, a purchase order. You'll have to grant permissions to users to use this functionality under both purchasing and AP. You want to give them permissions to automated transaction list. And this will allow the user to see and review those draft transactions that are automatically created. Two caveats with this new functionality. It's not applicable with Advanced Audit Trail, and it is not HIPAA compliant. So the next slide, we'll see a screenshot that shows what that automated transaction list looks like. So you will come here to upload your document, review and edit the invoice if needed, and post it. And all the way on the right, we see an example of an exception where it tells us this is a duplicate transaction, and then you can delete it if you need to. All right, I will throw it back to Jessica. Oh, we do have a poll question here. Do you currently use AP automation and/or purchasing? Automation, purchasing, both, neither. I think these modules will help my organization. Please show me more. Then after this poll question, I'll throw it back to Jessica for a few other topics.
Right. I think there are a few people that are interested in learning more about the AP automation with purchasing, which I think is really exciting. This is something that I've talked to a lot of clients about, that, you know, with the AP automation on its own was very helpful, but without having it linking to the purchasing module, it was missing a key component. So I think that's really exciting. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so in time and expenses, with this release, Intacct has made it to where employees can email their receipts. So this AI-powered receipt management is also a really great tool. I know a lot of clients are using peripheral systems outside of Intacct for receipt management, be that with a company credit card, or if employees are using their own cards and then submitting expense reimbursement reports. So with this update, your employees can email their receipts in as they're spending, as they're incurring the expenses, and then AI is going to help them with coding. And like Mike was talking about with the AI on the AP and purchasing side, that machine learning is going to start to identify, how do your receipts need to be coded? What vendors are being coded to certain things, to really help automate your employees' receipt coding and expense coding. So it's making their life a little bit easier as they're coding all of their expenses. And then they do have the opportunity to review and edit all of their receipt details and the coding that AI is helping them with, right? We need that little bit of human intervention. They're the ones that ultimately know what they, are spending their funds on and where that needs to be coded. So they have that opportunity, and then it does create the expense report to submit all within Sage Intacct. So it's not having, separate logins for different pieces of the puzzle. You're able to keep everything within Sage Intacct, which I think for some clients is pretty important. It's also important here to note we have a lot of clients that have the grants billing module. So even if you're thinking, oh, we don't have the time and expense module, so this doesn't apply to us. But if you're using grants billing, you actually have access to the time and expense module. So it's something that, again, if you see that grants billing option and you know that you're using that, it may be worth revisiting and seeing if the time and expense module is available to you so that you can take advantage of this offering. And that was a quick turnaround for another poll question, but we do have a question here with cash management. So do you have your bank feeds connected to the cash management module for more streamlined bank reconciliations? So we have yes or no. Those are pretty clean and simple. And then what is a bank feed? If you're in Sage Intacct and you don't know what the bank feed is, we definitely want to talk through that. Or of course, if you're not working on the bank reconciliations for your organization. We'll give you a little bit to answer that one.
And just as you guys are aware, we have a time check.
Okay, I think
12 minutes left till the top of the hour.
okay. I think we can do it.
Cool.
I think. Alrighty. Okay, so no one said what's a bank feed. That makes me feel a
Yeah,
lot.
that's good.
I I'm happy about that. So thank you. Even if you lied, thank you. All right. And so the first update that we want to talk through with cash management is related to the Natcha file. And I know when we were talking about this release beforehand, Dougie said, this is massive. So previously, if you needed a Natcha file out of Sage Intacct, you got one standard file. You only had one option. And if your bank didn't accept that, if you needed a balanced Natcha file with that EOF marker, that was not available, right? So now it is. So there's 4 different options of a Natcha file. So this is where if you need a Natcha file for your ACH payments out of Sage Intacct that would, make your ACH payments to vendors more streamlined, definitely reach out, see if we can, help make sure that you're maximizing the use of your Intacct instance. Because if your bank previously wouldn't accept the Natcha file, it may accept one of these 4. It really just depends on the bank's system on what they'll accept. So hopefully this fixes that. Some additional updates in cash management. So we talked about the bank feed in the polling question. So Access Pay is an option to connect your bank feeds to Sage Intacct. There are several different options. Plaid is a common one. Most people are familiar with Plaid. And then there's also 5span and now Access Pay. So if in the past you had tried to connect your bank to Sage Intacct for the bank feeds, but it wasn't available through Plaid, it may be an option with either 5span or Access Pay. And those bank feeds are very important. They can really streamline your bank reconciliation process. And that actually leads us into the next update, which is the draft cash posting from the bank feed. So if you have those bank feeds connected to Intacct and you have ACH payments that come in, as you're doing, hopefully, you're at minimum monthly cash reconciliation, hopefully weekly, getting a little closer to real-time posting. You're able to, from the bank transactions, you're able to code a customer payment to that customer's invoice. So then it will automatically match it on the bank side to streamline your reconciliation.
So
And
we have a couple of bank feed questions.
okay, yeah.
So one person asked, is connecting a bank feed to Sage, is that something that can be done cost-free on Sage Intacct, or is there an additional charge for it? There is no additional charge for the actual connecting of the bank feed, we can tell you. I mean, we do that all the time. However, there are banking rules that you'll need to set up, and that may require a few service hours, or but everybody, I mean, if you're on this webinar, you probably are part of the Power Assist plan. I don't remember what it's officially called. And so you get a certain number of hours with the Power Assist plan. That's that new support plan. And so you'll probably be able to use some of those hours so we can show you how to set up the rules, and then you can do the rest. And another one is, a lot of our clients, they either import transactions, bank transactions, and they can't, because they can't connect with the bank feed. To your point, Jessica, um, who should they contact if the regular bank feeds can't connect with Access Pay or one of the others? Just, do you want them to connect to just log a case with support, or contact you? What should they do?
Yeah, I think one option is definitely to log a case with support. We can help you. There's also on in the help, if I jump back over, so you always have an option on any screen to get help on this page. And so there's actually a list of bank accounts, and I should have done it from a different screen, from the bank feed screen. So if we go into the bank feeds overview here, and then we can manage connections, and then there should be a recommended standard connection. Okay, so here you see there's an entire list of different banks that Intacct works with. And so it'll show you here. So if you have Bank of America and you're a retail account type, you would use the Plaid connection. So there's all of the list of different, and so here we have FiSpan. So there's all the different banks that they work with, and then how you would connect. So I would say, if you take a look at this and you either don't see your bank, or, if it's a connection that you're not sure how to move forward with, definitely reach out in a support case, and we'll help get you connected.
Thank you.
Like Dougie said, if you have those Power Assist hours, bank feeds are probably one of the highest return on investment that you can use those hours for.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you.
Continue on.
Okay, I'm gonna kick it back to Mike here for general ledger.
All right, so who's had a problem in the past with reconciling their AP or AR subledger to their general ledger? I know some of you have, because I worked on a few projects cleaning that up. So the next feature we're going to discuss with this release will help alleviate that a little bit. I say a little bit because we know there are a few factors or reasons that can ultimately throw the subledger and GL out of balance. We all know we have the capability to disallow direct posting on a general ledger account. So this is crucial in keeping your subledgers in balance with your AP or AR control accounts. You only want transactions flowing through those accounts from your subledgers. So that's the main reason we see variances, the manual journal entries posted to those control accounts, excuse me. But now we have the functionality to disallow direct posting on specific journals. So if you enable this, transactions will only post to those journals through the subledger activity. So you will go to your journals list and you will edit the journal that you want to disallow posting, and you will see a box now appear at the bottom, right on the right-hand side. You see that disallow direct posting. This will also, I like this because it'll also help you search for manual journal entries when needed, because you're limiting which journals you are allowing direct posting. So let's say if you build a custom report for your general ledger detail, you can filter for only the entries that allow only the journals, excuse me, that allow direct posting. All right, so next slide. Some of you may be familiar with enhanced lists. It's been in beta mode for some time now. I mean, I remember when I was using Intacct as a user, 3-4 years ago, it was available in beta. It's now officially rolled out and has general availability across Intacct. You still have the option to use that traditional list view, but the enhanced list gives you some improved functionality. You can easily drag and drop columns to move them. You could resize columns just like in Excel. There's no more wildcard to search. So if you search for a word in the vendor name, any vendor that has that word anywhere in their name, it will appear. It will filter for that vendor or that word. You now have the ability to do advanced filtering. And my favorite advancement is the split screen. So on the next slide, once you turn on the enhanced list, you'll see the toggle button all the way on the right. You see in the yellow box. If you switch that on, you will turn to the view that you see in the bottom screenshot. And now you'll have your vendor list on the left and your vendor record on the right. So if you're making updates to various vendors at once, we'll save you a few time clicking in between vendors. So that'll bring us to our last poll question. Have you become familiar with Enhanced List while it was in beta? I really do like the enhanced lists. Does give you that good functionality. It's a little different to look at than the traditional list view, so it takes a little time to get used to it, but definitely has some good functionality.
The split screen would be super helpful if you're moving to the vendor approvals that we talked about earlier too, because you'd be able to update the vendor approval pretty quickly.
Yeah, good point. Well, it's a lot of no's. So we encourage you to take advantage of these enhanced lists and try it out and give it a shot. And now Jessica will take us home.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so we have Sage Copilot. I know, everyone's talking about AI, Copilot, all of the different things. So Sage does have Copilot. It is an additional subscription, but I wanted to make sure I brought it to everyone's attention that it's available. It does provide close assistance. That's what this screenshot on the right is. So just identifying, what do you have left before you close? Have you closed different modules? All of those different things, different subledgers. And then additionally, which I think a lot of people will probably be interested in, is the variance analysis. So it automates the alerts to you and kind of starts to learn the different variances and start to give you that description. As with any AI, anything, any computer, you all are in your positions for a reason, right? You have the critical thinking. You're able to take this information and run with it. So this isn't going to be necessarily a complete analysis. That's what you're for. But it can help you and start to identify the things that you should dig into a little bit more. It also has some data visualization options. And also, so we talked at the beginning of the webinar today about some webinars that we at JMT have coming up. We definitely want to see you all there, but also in the Sage University, there are some additional training videos, and one that I thought was very important that I talk with clients all the time about is a custom report writer. So if you are in the Sage University, you have the option to register for this class, and it's a 1-hour course, and you can learn a little bit more about the custom report writer and how you can do more with your Sage Intacct data.
All right. Thank you, Jessica and Mike. While this last poll comes up, I have 2 more questions. One is, can you explain about the direct posting in journals and what it means? Here's where it really comes in handy. So when you're on the journal entry screen, and you see the list of journal entry types, APJ, CRJ, all those other J's. Yes, your subledgers will post directly to, like when you enter a bill, it's going to post directly to APJ. When you make a payment, it's going to do a CDJ, etc. But the end user still has the ability to enter a manual journal entry to that journal type. And so potentially it could mess up your subledger depending on the rest of your configuration. So also locking, oh, thank you, Jessica. So also locking down your journal types so that you can only do manual journal entries to the journal types you designate is very beneficial. So that's what immediately came to mind when I found out about this functionality. And so that's very, very handy. The other question is Sage ever going to add the ability to merge duplicate vendors or customers? It seems that this has been a feature request for years now. True, it has been a feature request. We have no insight as to what enhancements or requests they work on next. If you have access to the community, I would highly encourage you to find that request and upvote it. The more people that upvote it, the better it is. Because right now, to merge a vendor, you really cannot merge a vendor. You can change the name, but the records still stay connected to the regular vendor. So Jessica and Mike, do you have any additional information on this question about ability to merge a duplicate vendor?
The
Not at this time.
Okay.
Yeah, the
Here's
only way that I've found to make
Mhm.
it even a little bit closer other than changing the name is to create a parent-child relationship, and
Yep.
then deactivate so no future transactions get coded to the child.
Yep. So here's one. We're a small nonprofit looking for a system to replace QuickBooks Desktop. How can you follow up? How can they follow up with more questions? So reach out to Marty or Kristen, and they'll be we'll be happy, or any one of us. And
Yeah,
all of us are first initial last name at jmtconsulting.com. And we will be happy to answer additional questions and route you to the right person to talk to.
yep. And I brought up all of our emails on the screen as
Uh-huh.
well. So definitely reach out. I think we're all more than
Mhm.
happy, and that's a very exciting time
All
in
right.
organization.
Any more questions? If not, we are out of time actually. And so thank you all very much for attending, and we look forward to hearing from you. You will be getting a copy of this deck as well as the recording link so that you can have it for review. Thank you, Mike and Jessica.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
everybody.
everyone.
Bye.